Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up.
Dodge this.
Jeffrey, and all the lovely folks watching at home, welcome to our horror Halloween extravaganza. And to kick us off for this special episode, what is the scariest thing to ever happen to you, Jeffrey? What is the thing that has scarred you as an adult the most?
As an adult, okay. Man, I don't know.
Like, I guess this has to be as an adult. Just what scarred you and scared you the most?
So, when I was a wee child, right, not but 8 years old, my family went on a trip to Strasbourg, France. Right, it was a group of about 12 people, immediate family and extended family. Right, and we went at around Christmas time. We were attending the various Christmas markets, right, that they had in the city. And at one point, all of us boarded this train. It was to take us to a different part of the city where more festivities were happening, right? And so we all got on this train. We sat down. I was staring out the window, and I just started zoning out, right? I was a very airy child. All of a sudden, a few minutes later, I turned to my mom to tell her something, and I realize she's not there. Right? I look around. I don't recognize anyone. And so I'm starting to freak out. I start crying. Right? And all of the French people around me, they're approaching me and they're trying to figure out what's wrong. They're very kind, but I didn't speak French. I didn't know what they were saying. So I just started bawling even more. Right? Finally, this kindly British lady approached, big curly hair, light shone behind her, made her hair glow like a halo. She handed me a tangerine. She said, "Hey, what's wrong?" Right? And I told her. She communicated to the train conductor in fluent French, and I was taken to a police station, right? Switched to my parents' perspective. They all got off the train, took a family photo. They split up to better explore the city. They meet back up again, and they're like, "Where's Jeffrey?" "Well, I thought he was with you. It was a true Home Alone situation. They check the family photo. Sure enough, I'm not there. And so they go to the police station. They call the police. Thankfully, there's a boy matching my description there. They go to the police station. They find me. My mom runs and hugs me. And she's like, "Jeffrey, what have you learned from this experience?" And she wanted me to say, "Well, I learned that I should pay closer attention to my surroundings." Right? Instead, I said, "I learned that y'all should pay closer attention to me."
I hate to break this to you, Jeffrey, but you never made it off that train. You died. You're a ghost. Welcome to our horror special episode of the Holy Moment Podcast, hosted by me, Nathaniel, and hosted by my co-host, Dead Jeffrey.
Boo.
Horrifying. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. We're taking a break from our normal spinning the wheel and picking movies to review a classic horror movie, one that needs no introduction. But if it did, Jeffrey, how would you introduce this movie?
I would say moody motels, spicy shower scenes, all the things that you wouldn't expect from a movie made in 1960, I'd say.
Jeffrey, we're watching Psycho, not porn.
It got pretty spicy, though. I have to imagine that this movie was met with a lot of moral outrage in certain sectors of the American populace, at least.
The rating that this movie got and how it handled not only violence, but also the sexual nature of the movie completely redefined kind of what you can do in storytelling, which is, we'll get into that a little bit later on in the relevance of Psycho. But yeah, we're reviewing Psycho today, guys. Thank you so much for joining us on this exciting episode. I am not a fan of horror. I couldn't even tell you the scariest moment as a kid for me because every minute alive was the scariest moment for me. And to give you an example, literally this past Saturday, I was up with my in-laws and we were celebrating my sister-in-law's birthday. And she wanted to go to a haunted house. And so her and her father and her siblings and the other in-laws all get in the car to leave at 10:30 to go to this haunted house. But me and my mother-in-law say, hell no. And we stay home and we both watched Your Name together. And so I'm very easily scared. I remember, here's my scary story. As a kid, I didn't like going to the gas station alone because I was too afraid I was going to see the Monster logo. You know, the energy drink, the 3 claws that are green?
Yeah.
Not too much for Nathaniel. That shit put me in bed for weeks with nightmares. So I even to this day, I don't like scary things. I travel very lightly when it comes to horror and film. I have to be very careful just because I won't sleep well and it just affects me mentally. So I just try not to do horror, which is a real shame because in the last like 2 years at my in the cinema department, I really grew to love like little bits of horror. I never like super got into horror. Like we had one other student who was with us, Jakey. He was a horror fanatic. All his short films were around horror. He's a great filmmaker. So I never got into that, but I really like pushing the edge. Psychological thrillers, blood and gore and violence. I found them fascinating. I thought you could tell really interesting stories with them. But so I started writing these stories, and those would like come out in my scripts and in my short films. But I never like dove super far into horror. So honestly, this is one of the very few genuine horror movies I've watched, to be honest with you. What about you, Jeffrey? Have you seen a lot of horror movies?
I don't typically dip my toes into horror films. I think, like you, they don't really sit well with me. A lot of them don't. I have been getting more into slashers. My friend Maximus, he's big into slashers, and he's been introducing me to the Scream franchise, which is genuinely great. The thing is, I am the best person to watch a horror film with because I am incredibly jumpy, right? At the slightest provocation, I will just be out of my seat through the roof and halfway to Mars.
It's funny because I'm the same way. I didn't really know this about myself, which is funny because I lived with like three other guys in college, you being one of them. You think this would have came up in college, but it didn't. But then when I moved in with my at the time girlfriend, then fiance, now wife, I was just spooked by her all the time. Like it's become an inside joke, but it's true. Like she comes home from work and she like tries to make her like presence known so she doesn't come into the office and like scare me, or she'll just like walk into the laundry room and I'll be in there and I'll just turn around and she'll be there and I'll be scared. So like I'm just a very like jumpy person, and I don't know why. I don't feel like I was like that way in college. So we'll have to unpack that. I'll have to go talk to my wife and be like, why am I only scared around you? What have you done to me?
I'm the same way. People will just, it's very easy to spook me. I enjoy jumping, right? I enjoy that spook that I get. I get a great kick out of it. I think it all started with me. I was taking a nap one 4th of July when I was in middle school, early middle school, maybe late elementary school. My brother thought that it would be really funny if right next to my head, like on my nightstand, he just lit a bunch of firecrackers.
Oh,
And so I was dead asleep. All of a sudden, pop, 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 like a ton of bullets going off, a machine gun. Freaked me out, cried a lot. My mom got onto my brother. And ever since then, I think I've been a bit jumpy.
yeah, I don't know where my original trauma goes back to. I'm gonna continue to blame it on the energy drink Monster. Also, the only time I ever drank Monster, I got sick. So again, just gonna put it out there. Scary stuff. But anyways, let's wrap this around back to movies rather than just our own personal stories. Not that I don't love hearing them. Before we jump into Psycho, what's the scariest movie you've ever seen?
Man, scariest movie I've ever seen. The most unpleasant horror movie I've ever seen is Gerald's Game. So several of our friends in college had a weekly horror movie group. They'd watch movies, and I wanted to join one night, and so I did. It was the one and only night I joined, and they watched Gerald's Game. And man, the sound design was incredible, and by incredible I mean it was awful, and I hated it. Right? You have people, their skin is being peeled off.
Oh,
It's very gory and it's very uncomfortable, right? And so I would say maybe, I don't know if that's the scariest, but it's definitely the most visceral and the one that stuck with me the most.
yeah. To quote one of our film professors in college, I can't do torture stuff. Like
Yeah,
like it's one thing if it's James Bond and it's kind of cool and suave and he's gonna get out of there and beat him up, but I can't do helpless torture. I will. There are a few movies I swear off, but I swore off the Saw movies. Never seen them, and I don't care if it's just in my own mind. I will never watch them. Just it seems very upsetting. It's so funny. I feel like Jeffrey and I both were like, "Oh, it's Halloween. We should do like a Halloween special." And we're both like, "We don't really like horror films." So when we suggested them and we ran our poll on Instagram, we did like very non-scary horror films. And I feel like, like uh, I'm not to be like a film critique artisan douchebag, but I do feel like if you're going to have a podcast and if you're going to like pursue filmmaking, there are certain movies you should watch. Not saying you have to. You can be a filmmaker and not have seen every like great film out there. But Psycho is one of those movies that's like, okay, I got to do it at some point, and it's Halloween, so I might as well bite the bullet now.
Absolutely. Speaking of our poll, do we want to just list off the movies that were suggested, the potential options?
Yeah. So I suggested two, and Jeffrey suggested two, and we had you, our lovely audience, vote on them. I suggested Psycho, and my original suggestion was Cabin in the Woods, because I was going to do it with just one movie I picked and one movie Jeffrey picked, but I was like, we should do more the merrier. And I knew Cabin in the Woods, I think, is like scary and has some like creepy or gross moments, but I also kind of know the joke with Cabin in the Woods, and I know it's almost like a meta on horror, so I thought I could handle it. And then Psycho, I also knew, like, I know this is almost more of a dark thriller than horror, so I was pretty confident I could handle that. And then Jeffrey, you tell you yours.
Yeah, so my two were Sweeney Todd, The Barber of Fleet Street, I think it's what it's called. I've seen that movie. I love it. I think it's great. Music's great. And then the other one was Nosferatu the Vampire, which came out in the 70s, Werner Herzog. And I'd seen stills from this movie. I'd really liked the style of it. And I'd heard that their take on Nosferatu is slightly more psychological and tragic. And so that just intrigued me. And you can tell from our picks that we're not huge horror buffs. This isn't a genre we love diving into.
But if there are some horror buffs out there, if this ever makes its way to Jakey or Jaron Lewis, email us at theholymomentpodcast@gmail.com and tell us what horror movies to watch. And remember, Jeffrey and I, slightly babies. Maybe don't start with the most upsetting thing in the world. But something classic, something good that we'll enjoy, that has some good storytelling and some horror components. Because again, I think the stories you can tell with the elements of horror, I think are really, really fascinating. It just sucks I'm so easily scared. But all that to be said, Jeffrey, what did you know about Psycho? I don't know. Do we need to? Who doesn't know what Psycho like? Alfred Hitchcock, literally his most famous film of all time, one of like the most historically important movies and made in cinema history. Just if you don't know what it is, go look it up. But it is the defining kind of dark psychological horror movie that came out in the 1960s and redefined like horror storytelling, but just also like storytelling in general that could be done through films. So Jeffrey, what did you know about this going in?
There's that famous final shot or penultimate shot, I should say, of him smiling at the camera, right? Which is iconic. There's of course the shower scene where he, rips out the curtain and stabs her to death, right? And there's the famous riff, like musical riff, wah, 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 wah. And we'd been shown the staircase scene, right, with Argenbottom, whatever the private eye's name is,
Arbogast.
Arbogast, yeah. I think that we'd been shown that scene in a class once. I can't remember which. All those things. I think that I'd also skimmed a plot summary years ago. And so I did not know most of the details of what would occur. But as soon as the mother entered the picture with the knife, right, in the shower, I think I connected the dots pretty quickly.
I was very similar where I knew all those kind of key pop culture moments that everyone kind of has like an image in their brain about. And then I vaguely knew the storyline. But yeah, as soon as like the first murder happened, I was like, okay, I see what's happening here, which is a bummer. It's always with a movie with a twist. Whenever you watch a movie with a twist, you always ask yourself, if I didn't know about the twist, would I picked up on it? Because when you know about the twist and you're watching the movie, it's like, well, this is so obvious what they're doing. Is it, or do you just know what the twist is? I'll never know. Who knows? I can't unless I get amnesia one day. Yeah, unless I pull a Memento from last week and have short-term memory loss, then I go back and rewatch this. But normally, the host writes out a beautiful synopsis. They sit down with their keyboard, they light a candle, and they write out a beautiful cavalcade of words to describe the movie. Since this is technically no one's movie to host, we're kind of just going back and forth here, and so no one prepared a synopsis. So I'm going to give you a very off-the-cuff synopsis. Psycho, a dyke. Oh no. It's not a dyke. It's a dark psychological thriller. We'll get to the dykes. No. It's a dark psychological thriller. And this follows Marion Crane, kind of, sort of. She is a secretary, kind of like enthrones with a man that she wants to marry, but they kind of have a secret relationship, which, like, why? They're both single. They're both attractive. I mean, they kind of give reasons why, but like, just get married. What the heck? So she basically one day is given $40,000 to go put into the bank for her job. And she's like, you know what? What if I take this $40,000 and go run off to my secret boyfriend? So that's what she does. But the weather's really bad. So she ends up having to go to the Bates Motel. And there she meets the owner, Norman Bates. And they have a weird little back and forth, and ultimately leads to her death and a shower. And then the rest of the movie, her sister, Lily Crane, and the boyfriend, Sam, have to hunt down and figure out who did this and what happened. And they end up finding out it was Norman Bates, the motel owner. And that is the movie of Psycho.
Yeah, interestingly enough, the moments that I found myself the most anxious and at the edge of my seat, sort of in that first half, as she's making her way to the Bates Motel, right? As she's leaving town and evading the cop and sort of reflecting on, okay, like, my sister must be thinking this, my boss must be thinking that. Because I have to imagine that's what it was. It wasn't actually recounting what they were saying. It was her imagining those scenarios. I thought that did a great job. It was a great job of showing us what was on her mind, but then also creating tension when the police officer pulled her over, and the extreme close-ups on them both made the scene feel incredibly claustrophobic. And the fact that you couldn't see his eyes because his sunglasses were so blacked out. Yeah, I just thought that those scenes were very tense.
It was so, this movie, I mean, Alfred Hitchcock is kind of a weird dude. He's kind of been painted as like a weird guy with his fascinations with psychology and like pseudo-sexualism. The only other Alfred Hitchcock movie I've seen is Rear View Window, a super, I'm going to try to say this word a lot in the podcast, I'm going to fail, voyeuristic film. The idea of watching other people with an underlining sexual kind of orientation. Like, you almost get off on watching other people, whether they're doing sexual things or they're just like living their life, but you enjoy watching them. So Rear Window is, the whole plot is voyeurism. But this movie, extremely voyeuristic. Like you said, that cop, there was something so menacing as he doesn't know that she stole this money, but he knows something's going on. So we just see him following her, like following her down the road. And she just keeps looking back, and he's not like tailgating her, but he's there following. And then when she goes to sell the car because she's trying to get a new car to, like get rid of the evidence, start a new life, he's literally just standing across the street, just watching her. We'll cut to her POV, wide shot, him across the street watching. She goes back, like really nervous, really anxious, just selling the car. Cut back to her POV. He's just really chill watching. So you get a lot of different, you're really shifting people's POVs of just this idea of constantly watching, but not very often something happens. And especially in the first half of the movie, nothing ultimately bad happens. It's just people watching. And I think it's, like you said, Jeffrey, it's that watching that puts you on edge. Someone's always there with you. Something could happen at any moment, but you don't know from who or from what. And again, it's a bummer that this was spoiled, because I'd be really interested to go into this movie not knowing this. But we all know the shower scene. It is the most iconic scene from this movie. And I would easily say top 5 most iconic scenes in all movies of all time. Just super iconic, where Norman Bates stabs her in the shower and you have that like classic soundtrack. But up until that moment, it just feels like everyone is watching our main character. Everyone's watching Marion, and you don't know. And because she's done something bad, she stole money. So it's like the quote unquote justice, is the cops going to get her? Is it going to be Norman Bates, this weird guy that like maybe is like kind of a creepy guy, but also not like, he kind of seems maybe like a nice guy. We don't know his whole ordeal. So, but all to be said, the murder happens about halfway through the movie. But until the murder happens, nothing too crazy scary happens. But I think Hitchcock purposely is building this tension. It's not like we open up on a gory murder or anything creepy or demonic. I think it's more of an atmospheric building of everyone's watching her. Who's going to be the first to strike?
Yeah, I mean, that first, the slow zoom in through the window of the apartment into that like private, intimate moment between Sam and Crane, uh, plays into that voyeurism, right? It feels like we're invading someone's private space. We should not be here. We should not be looking through this window, and that's how the movie begins, is with us invading and watching where we ought not watch.
Fun fact about that opening scene. It's an older movie, 1960s. I get their technology isn't going to be as slick and as cinematic as ours, and I'm not expecting that. But that opening scene was kind of bad. Not Marion and Sam in the bedroom, them making out and them having the discussion of why aren't we dating. But like you just said, Jeffrey, we open up on this like drone, quote unquote drone shot, because it was a helicopter shot, and we're over this town. And it's supposed to be this smooth transition into this window. It reminds me of what they would like they wanted to with Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump opens up with like feather falling through the sky and it's twirling all around, going through trees, going through buses, and the camera magically follows it until it lands at the feet of Forrest Gump. That is what it feels like it should be with better technology. But instead, it's this really janky crossfade, push in, zoom in on like just different buildings, and it doesn't work. And when I was doing my research, apparently Alfred Hitchcock was going exactly what we're talking about. That idea of where the audience, we're not supposed to be in on this conversation, but we slip in through the window seamlessly. But they originally were trying to do it in one take with a helicopter, but the helicopter ended up being too jumpy, being too like shaky. So they had to intercut it with other just stock footage. And so that's why that opening is how it is, which I'm happy there's a reason, because I remember watching the movie and being like, for being a famous movie, this kind of sucks, this opening cinematography. But the rest of the cinematography of the movie, 10 out of 10. So I'll forgive it.
I have to imagine like Alfred Hitchcock really hates watching that, right? Because I know that as someone that's made short films, and you as someone who's made short films, it always sucks when you have this idea in your head, and due to just the situation on set, you have to adjust, and it does not read.
Yeah, it's the worst when you have to pivot. I mean, obviously, man, making movies is all about pivoting. It's all about pivoting and putting out fires. But I think that's the sign of a good director. How can you pivot to something that'll work just as good, if not better? And how can you put out those fires and move seamlessly to the next thing?
And I wonder, like, had something like that been done before? Because I think of Leonardo da Vinci, right? Incredible genius, painter, architect, inventor. He had plans for a flying machine, right? And he couldn't get any of them to work, right? But he was the first to really try and find some measure of like, maybe this is plausible, He's still putting things out there. Was Alfred Hitchcock a Leonardo da Vinci in this case? Was he trying something that was just a little ahead of his time? Or had this been done to greater effect elsewhere?
I mean, that's a great question. I don't know specifically with the helicopter shot, but I can say with confidence, he was a Leonardo da Vinci. He was pushing the envelope when it came to this story in particular. And that's what I think makes Psycho so memorable. And it's something I really want to talk about. When do you start to divorce art and the artist and saying like, this artist, this director, this filmmaker pioneered this type of cinematography. They pioneered this type of acting. They pioneered this type of writing. And we appreciate them for that. And they're geniuses for that. But when the first person, and I used this analogy earlier when I was talking to Jeffrey today, when the first person made bread, do you think that bread was good? I feel like that bread was disgusting and moldy and stale. But the fact that they were able to make bread is enormous for mankind. And we remember the bread maker. We don't necessarily remember the bread. And so my question becomes like with these movies, something like Citizen Kane, these not even genre, but these film history redefining movies that are completely going to shape the future of movie making. Do we want to remember the filmmaker or the film? And I'm sure in some instances it's a bit of both or maybe one or the other. But when it comes to Psycho, Jeffrey, do you feel all of the advancements that it did for the genre and storytelling justifies it being really one of the best kind of dark thriller horror movies of all time? Or do you feel like I'm so thankful it was made and it paved the way for so much, but it is not the best film? Not filmmaker, but film.
Yeah, I don't think it's the best film, and it's probably not the best psychological thriller. I still really enjoyed it. I think it's still worth watching today. But I also would agree that there are techniques that were pioneered that look a bit dated, right? I was talking to my dad. I asked him if he had ever seen Psycho. He doesn't really watch a ton of movies, but he said, "Yeah, I mean, your mom and I, we watched it about 5 years ago. We'd heard a lot of really great things about it, and so we just figured we'd put it on." And then he said, "Well, it doesn't compare to any of the things that that come out nowadays. Of course, like they do things a lot better now, but it must have been really scary back then." And so it's a good bit of perspective, right? I love movies. I love film history, and I love watching movies that are known to have pioneered something, or films that have broken ground. And knowing that a film has done that increases my enjoyment of it immeasurably. But for a general audience member, they don't really see that. They'll just see the film for what it is, and so it's something to think about and consider and weigh.
I would say I fully agree. I think Psycho is absolutely, I don't know, maybe this is just heresy, so shoot me if you want, filmmakers. I think Psycho is absolutely a movie that can be watched in this day and age and still be said, that was a really good movie. I thought Psycho was a really well done movie. I really enjoyed it. But I do think what is more impressive is what it sets up for future filmmakers rather than the movie itself. And we've been saying that a bunch. So let's give some examples of how Psycho changed the landscape for these types of movies and storytelling in general. And I think we don't have to look any further than the middle of the movie. Marion Crane, the most famous scene in the entire movie, the shower scene. That scene came in the middle of the movie. Marion Crane was our stereotypical protagonist. She had taken the money. She's on the run. She starts off as kind of the villain. Maybe not the villain, but at least like she's done something wrong. Maybe we could root against her if some knight in shining armor is introduced. But no one is. She finds herself at the Bates Motel, and we find her with Norman Bates. Kind of this. At first, we think he's maybe charming and just like a down on his luck guy, but we soon find out he's creepy. He watches her like get changed and shower through a peephole, and he does taxidermy. I'm sorry if anyone out there who listens to our podcast does taxidermy. You're weird. That's all I'm going to say. Moving on. So we find out Norman Bates is a creepy dude. All of a sudden, Marion Crane is our protagonist. She's the one we're rooting for. We don't want her to get hurt. She did get stabbed to death halfway through the movie. Boom, perspective shift. Now, if you're watching this movie and you grew up in this day and age in the 20th century, that's nothing crazy. I mean, it's not normal still, but it's definitely been done before. But it hadn't really been done up until that point. So you have to think, if you're the audience, you've never seen something like that. Maybe you've seen something where you follow the protagonist at the very end. They don't win. They don't get the money. They don't get the girl. Or maybe even they die. But you've never seen anything where halfway through they say, hey, you know this person you're following? Just kidding. They're dead. We're going to go change perspectives. Did you know that going in, Jeffrey? Or were you surprised when they killed Marion halfway through?
Well, I mean, the scene from Psycho is the shower scene of her getting stabbed. And so was I 100% certain that she would be that girl at the front of the movie? I did not know that. I wasn't sure, right? I had a feeling that that could be the case. But as soon as she stopped by that motel, right, I knew that it had to be her, right? Because she's going to have to spend the night here. She's going to have to take a shower. But it was shocking to me at that point, knowing that the shower girl was so much a part of that first half of the film, right? I think I'd always imagined her being a marginal presence in the film, right? Only a victim. But here, she had agency, and she had goals, and she had plot threads that couldn't be resolved because her life was cut short tragically. So yeah, it was shocking to see how it was played out.
I agree. And I think going in, knowing that she was the lady that was going to die, I think it shocked me even more because I was like, oh, okay, here we go. Here's this lady. She stole the money. She goes to this hotel. She's going to try and get away. And then at the end, she's going to end up being murdered. And that's the end of the movie. Because that's what I knew to be true. I knew she was going to die in a shower. And since she's our main character, she has to die at the end of the movie. So when she entered into the shower and she got in the shower, I was like, oh, okay. So maybe there's going to be more voyeurism. Maybe she's going to take a shower and Norman Bates is going to peep in on her and it's going to antsy the creepiness even more. And there'll be another scene like that until finally he can't help himself and he goes in and he murders her. But no, so that's what I thought was going to happen. But no, he just shows up and he kills her right then and there. And again, put yourself in the 1960s theater. You've never experienced anything like this. It's a complete mind F of what's going on. And so I think Alfred Hitchcock really plays with the anxiety of the audience. We no longer can trust anything. We no longer know what's happening. We've really been swept off our feet. So that's why this movie to me doesn't feel like a classic horror movie because it feels so much more atmospheric and it builds tension. And I know everyone says that's what you want out of a horror movie. And so that's what I think another thing it set the groundwork in is how do you build tension with these long lingering shots? How do you build tension with instead of like, oh, here's a jump scare, here's something creepy, here's something scary. It's much just slower. It's much more normal. How did you feel Alfred Hitchcock built tension and did you feel like it was effective?
I thought it was incredibly effective. I thought that the scene at the beginning of the movie, where that scummy rich man came in, was talking to the girls and waving around his big bucks, right? That was incredibly tense, and he was just being a creep. No one was in any immediate danger, but it was just so hard to be in that room with them, where he's being so overtly awful and gross, and they just have to like take it. Alfred Hitchcock is, I think he's called like the king of suspense for that reason. And with these older films, like they were limited in what they could show on screen. And so it makes sense that it would be more atmospheric and that it would be more about the buildup than the big flashy gory moments. Like I loved the shot of her in the shower. She's minding her own business and we see through the blurry curtains, the opaque curtains. I don't know the right word. Semi-transparent. And he opens the door. He's walking towards her, and she's none the wiser, right? We just see a blurry figure. Incredibly tense. Incredibly tense.
I think Alfred Hitchcock, one of the things he did to master suspense, is something that I don't know if we could do it in this day and age in filmmaking, for better or for worse. And what he does is he uses the camera to force an object into view to build tension. Okay, what the heck does that mean? A very simple scene, a very simple idea. After Marion is killed, Lilla, the sister, Lilla Crane, she's hunting for her sister, trying to figure out what happened. She and Sam, the boyfriend, go to the Bates Motel. And at this point, they believe that Norman Bates' mother is alive because a whole story thread throughout, not a story thread, it's like one of the most important pieces, is that Norman Bates lives with his overbearing, old, cranky mother. And everyone thinks the mother holds the key to the mystery of what happened to Marion Crane. Norman Bates owns a house on top of a hill. And below the hill is where the Bates Motel is. So Lilla Crane is like, oh, the mom must be in the house. I'm going to go there. Alfred Hitchcock films it in such a way where we it's POV and what the camera focuses on. So Lilla Crane, we get her POV of the house and specifically the door. And then he takes a really long time of showing his characters walking all the way there while really focusing on their POV of the door. So now we're giving the audience of our character is stressed about going into this situation. How do we kind of bring that into the physical realm? Okay, there's a door. Literally, they have to cross it to get into the realm of their goal. And so Alfred Hitchcock uses this idea of the camera and showing the audience, here's a thing, and then slowly pushes in on it, slowly has the character going towards that goal. And it just creates a suspense in us as humans. We have to watch them go towards this goal very slowly. I believe it's a famous quote or something from Alfred Hitchcock with the idea of suspense. It's like, yeah, it's pretty suspenseful to have a room full of guys playing poker and then all of a sudden the room explodes. Like, yeah, like, whoa, that was crazy, like a jump scare. It's a lot more suspenseful if you have a room of guys playing poker, the camera pans down and shows us a bomb. And then we're sitting in the room. Is it going to go off in 30 seconds? 5 minutes, 10 minutes? Are all the men going to make it out of the room? Is one of the men going to make it out of the room? Is the guy that we like going to make it out? Or is the guy that we don't like going to make it out? Is it a real bomb? So by showing us this information, it gives us, the audience, something to be stressed about. And so I just think it's a great way of how he did. And the reason I say, sorry to cut myself off, the reason I say I don't know if it can be done this day and age is because I think sometimes audience we've maybe evolved to like something a little more subtle, and I think sometimes just showing a bomb or like again just using the camera to show the audience, hey, be scared of this, and then have someone slowly approach it can maybe be a little bit too on the nose. But again, I still think the core idea of it, that core idea of how to build suspense is there, and then future filmmakers can build upon it.
Oh, for sure. And I think he demonstrates that idea very well. Also, it's a lower stakes scene when Norman is cleaning out Marion's room, and we have the $40,000 wrapped up in the newspaper, and he's grabbing this, he's grabbing that, and we're wondering, okay, well, we know that the newspaper is in the room, the money's in the room, and is he going to grab that? And finally, he does find it. It looks like he's about to leave without it, but he sees it, and he grabs it, and he throws it away, which was very interesting, that like the money was never recovered, right? And everyone was thinking there must have been some financial motive. And of course, it's just he's a deeply sick man. And he didn't even know that the money was there.
No, that's a great example of what I was saying. Yeah. And also, I think I love that. I think this again speaks to this movie. Maybe if we watched it in 2025, where we're like, there was not really even any nudity, there was like no blood, there was no real gore, we would say this barely pushes the bounds of anything. But for 1960, my goodness, this was really pushing the bounds of horror and what you can show in violence and sexuality. But I also like to think the idea of like people are so used to the idea of, oh, it's like a robbery. That's the motivation. That's the action. That's the excitement. Maybe in the 1960s, we're going to follow this girl who stole money. That by itself is a relatively exciting story. I'd follow it. But no, like you just said, Jeffrey, he threw the money in the trunk. It was never about money. Like the psychologist said at the very end of the movie, this wasn't a movie. This wasn't a murder of money. It was a murder of passion, because Norman Bates is a sick man, and I think that's a cool thing of just a storytelling idea of how Alfred Hitchcock said, hey, you know what the story you're used to? The attractive female, the male lead, the attractive male lead, the money. They make it to the end. That's not the story I'm telling. She's dead. It's not about the money. So again, I think it just in that moment in the middle of the movie, completely 180 the whole point of the movie, and I think they did a great job with it.
I'm actually really glad you brought up the psychiatrist at the end, because he sort of gives us an exposition dump, right? Explaining exactly everything that was wrong with Norman, and how it got to that point. What were your thoughts on that? Do you think that that was well executed?
I think it was necessary, but not maybe the best done. Again, pioneering the way for these types of movies, but a little bit on the nose. Sometimes the on the noseness worked. I think in this instance, it's like it was needed, but could have been done better. Because I remember getting to the end of the movie, and Norman Bates is arrested for the murder of Marion Crane, and a psychiatrist has to like be the only one to talk to him because they find out this dude's insane. He dresses up as his dead mother that he keeps in the basement and murders people. So the psychiatrist goes and talks to him, and he comes out and he's like, oh, I wasn't talking to Norman Bates. I was talking to the mother, and then he gives the exposition, which is literally everything Jeffrey just said. So I'm sorry, I'm just repeating what you said.
No, it's all good.
But to answer your question, I think it's a necessary evil. Could it have been done with more finesse? Yes. But I do remember getting to that end scene and being like, we got 5 minutes of this movie left. I get what was going on, but I wouldn't. There's also like a lot of plot threads. Like, how did the mom actually die? How did the dad die? What was up with the mother and the lover? There was just like these like loose things that were clearly meant to be told, but we weren't sure how. So like, hey, there's only 5 minutes left. What's going to happen? And to use the psychiatrist as like a plot device of exposition, I think I'm happy, because if they hadn't done that, I would have been disappointed. There just wasn't quite enough answered things that I wanted to know. But I think they could have done it in a better way. They could have done it less on the nose, less exposition, and just more showing, not telling, which is always better in film. I'm not saying in this moment I could tell you how they could have done that. So, like I said, double-edged sword. They did it. I was happy they did it. I think they could have done it better.
I agree. I think it did feel a bit clunky, and I think that he was over explaining, or it felt that way to me at points. So I actually looked it up. I was wondering if other people had the same experience, and sure enough, other people too had felt that it was overly expository. But something that people also were bringing up was that depictions of this kind of mental illness were not common, right? Um, and these things were not as well understood. And so the audience in the 1960s perhaps needed that exposition even more than we did, right? To understand the context of why was that Norman Bates acting in that funny way, right? Perhaps we would have picked up on it a bit sooner, and even with shorter exposition, that he had multiple personalities. But that wasn't something that wasn't even a trope that was fully understood. And I say trope, but it's an actual condition. But it has since become almost a trope in certain psychological thrillers.
Again, taking
Um,
for granted that this movie pioneered so much. So yeah, it would make sense in the 1960s that it's a pretty unheard of condition. And the things he like, if he didn't exist, if that character, the exposition doctor didn't exist, I would have gotten most of the gist. Okay, Norman Bates kept his dead mother in the basement because he had like a weird fetish Freudian thing for her. Okay, Norman Bates dresses up as his mother and kills women. I would have gotten that, but I wouldn't have known to what degree. Like when he said, Norman, the reason Norman Bates kills women is because the mother, because in Norman Bates' mind, he has unhealthily attached himself to the mother. And so the only way he can justify it is also saying, well, my mom cares about me just as much. Like Norman Bates actually killed his mother and his mother's lover because he was jealous of the attention the mom was giving the lover. And so he's like, well, I did this horrible thing. The only way I can justify it is if my mom also cares for me just as much. So if I'm willing to kill for her, she must be willing to kill for me. So the mother is actually the one that comes out and kills these women because it's like, well, you can't love my son. So I think that is super fascinating. That's like quite a few levels down. And I would not have known that. If there was no psychiatrist, I would not have gotten that it was the mother coming out jealous in air quotations of these women and killing them. And it's all of his deep unhealthiness that he's projecting onto his mother and then pretending to be. Would you have, let's say they just cut the whole psychiatrist scene. They just didn't have it. Do you think you would have gotten as much out of it? Like, would you rather have had that? And like, okay, it's a little goofy, it's a little blundery, it's a little on the nose. Or would you rather not had it and not gotten as much context? And maybe it's slightly open-ended. Like kind of at how like last week when we were talking about Memento and the main character. We could kind of read into his amnesia, kind of like what exactly is his mental illness. With this movie, there is no reading into the mental illness. It is very verbatim said. Would you rather have read into it, would you rather at least have been told?
I I think there could have been a good middle ground, leaving more room for us to read into it while explaining some of the more complicated bits, or at least showing it. I think that's the thing is the psychiatrist's exposition was interesting, but it felt more like I was reading a Wikipedia article and less like I was watching a movie. Film is an audiovisual medium. And so these exposition dumps are not utilizing the medium to its fullest capacity. And it's a weird criticism to level against this filmmaking titan who knew cinematic language to a T and executed it very well in so many instances. But that's just all that I can think to say about this scene here is too much telling, not enough showing. And I think some ambiguity would have been cool, some room for us to theorize and read into.
Yeah. I think something that would have been interesting. It still would have been exposition, but I think it could have been slightly more exposition, better exposition. And I was surprised we didn't get it because I literally spoiled myself. I think that a few hours before I watched the movie, because I was trying to make a thumbnail for this before I watched the movie, and I saw a picture of an emancipated, like the mother, the emancipated skeleton.
That was a shock to me. That was scary.
Oh, was it? Okay, good.
Yeah.
Wait, when they like approached her in the basement, and for context of the scene, again, it's Lilla Crane, the sister of the married woman. She thinks that the mother Norman Bates has a secret that's going to bust open this case. So she sneaks in there and is trying to find her, but then Norman Bates bursts in, chasing her, trying to kill her, but she makes it down to the basement first. and she approaches her in this really creepy basement, and the mother is sitting in a chair with her back to the camera, and she turns the chair around, and it's this emancipated skeleton. Did you like when she was approaching and she's like, "Hey, Mrs. Bates, hey, I'm gonna talk to you." Were you like, "Oh, she's dead," or did you not know until it was turned around?
I knew that she wasn't alive. I think that for much of the movie, I was working under the assumption that this was a Lars and the real girl kind of situation where we have a mannequin that he's dressing up and pretending is his mom. And I think it wasn't until she was approaching the body in the chair that I began to think, oh no, like, is this? And it really wasn't until we got close up to the back of the wig, or not the wig, the hair. It's hair. It's not a wig. That it began to dawn on me. And sure enough, like, they turn her around and she's mummified corpse. And that was genuinely freaky to me. That genuinely took me off guard.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy that they hired the mummy from the movie The Mummy to suck her dry and turn her into like a corpse.
Yeah, this is actually, like, he's uncredited in the film, but it
Yeah.
opened a lot of doors for him.
Yeah, truly, we need to start a union for Juicy Bones Mummy Guy. If you want to hear our conversation on The Mummy, go back to season 2. I think it's the finale of season 2 where we talk about the mummy.
Yeah, we got some fun episode, hot takes. We were in person. We're gonna do more of that at some point. That was fantastic. Maybe in the future it'll all be in person, but
One day when Jeffrey moves to Atlanta. But besides the point, but the point I was making was the way I wish they handled that exposition, or at least some of the exposition, and I'm surprised we didn't get it. I wish there would have been a scene between Norman Bates talking to the mummy or his dead mother, and then him voicing his own dead mother. Because we don't see it, but we'll hear it from the house and scenes where he's having a conversation back and forth, and she's berating him. So even in Norman Bates' mind, his mother's still alive, and she's still a sadistic old lady that's like cruel. And so it'd been really interesting if he was there, like berating himself and having this conversation with her, giving us a little bit of exposition of what's going on.
I had that
So
thought
that's
too.
a small way that could have been nice.
No, I had that same thought. I wanted to see him talking to himself, because as soon as we were catching on that, okay, like he's talking to himself, is he making both voices, right? Is that actor, are both of those voices coming out of his throat? And it would have been very unsettling to see that. I don't know, because it sounds pretty feminine. The voice sounds pretty feminine, but it also sounds almost cartoonishly old in a way that could be like a guy faking.
When I was on Wikipedia, I don't remember seeing a credit for her voice, so it might be his. Anthony Perkins is who played Norman Bates. And another thing, he did a phenomenal job acting. I think it just would have been great to see that scene, because like the moments he goes full psycho, haha, name drop, he's usually in silhouette because he's usually dressed up as the mom, because we're believed it's the mom that's going psycho. So we do slightly, especially that final shot, but we don't always get a super like, here is Norman Bates full crazy. And I think he did such a great job, Anthony Perkins, acting. I think that a scene where he's talking to himself delusionally would have been a good showcase of his acting, that the movie hinted at that he was capable as an actor, but I think it could have been a cool moment. But it does make the final shot of the movie more powerful, because the final shot of the movie is him alone in this jail cell, and we push in on him, this low, dark angle, and he smiles. It's probably maybe the second most famous shot, this really sadistic, demented smile. And I feel like if we had gotten a full-blown Norman Bates sadistic moment earlier, where we really see him fully in light, it would have made that moment less powerful. Because that's like the first moment we really see Norman Bates fully embracing his sadistic side.
Or his mother, as it were. Norman,
Yeah.
poor boy, he's gone.
Well, I know we said we were going to co-host this episode. I know I've been asking most of the questions. So Jeffrey, I'm gonna step aside. It's almost as if we're two people in one body, battling it out for who can talk the most. But yeah. What do you have any questions for me, or anything you want to discuss?
I want to talk about our suspension of disbelief, right? Because as great as this movie was, there were moments that sort of took me out of it. Some of those moments were, I think, when Marion's hearing Norman and his mother argue with one another. That voiceover, it felt a bit dated, and it didn't feel convincing as a performance, right? It's great when he's on camera, but I don't know. It just didn't feel like a real conversation she was overhearing. Didn't sound like a real conversation she was overhearing. And that took me out of it a bit. And then, as great as the shower scene was, the actual like stabbing didn't feel convincing at all. And that took me out of it as well. And I don't say all of this to shit on the movie. I say this more just to show how like these movies, they've pioneered things, right? And we can recognize that they're pioneers and love them for that. But also we can recognize how far we've come in certain respects as well. But were there moments for you that just sort of took you out of it?
I do think one of the main moments was the shower scene. One specific shot. Because again, I rewatched the scene multiple times, and I know this has been like a pop culture moment. I wanted to read up on the significance, why people really thought it was so important. And again, it's because this scene had everything that pushed the movie. Like we already discussed, it was a scene that pivoted our main character in the middle of the movie, a scene that killed someone. It's also a scene that showed the most like nudity and also the most quote unquote like not quote unquote violence. It was violent just for the time. And again, even though this wasn't violent for us, even though it wasn't sexual for us, it's like a drop in the hat to have nudity, like full on sex scenes in movies nowadays. Drop in the hat, like a PG-13 movie can have more violence than this movie had to some degree, it almost feels like. But at the time, again, flabbergasted people. This was not shown in movie theaters. So this is the scene that pioneered so much. But also people really praised the editing and the rhythm. And so I watched it a handful, especially as an editor, I watched it a handful of times to really try and pick up on that. And I did agree that I think the beginning of it and the end of it was the best. I think the middle part, the actual stabbing and the actual moments were going eek eek eek. I know, great. I'm so good at music. I think those were the biggest letdowns. I think the beginning of that scene was so well done. It was slow. It was methodical. How they shot it was creepy. Just that camera facing straight up at the water, and the water was coming straight down at it, and just her showering, and then like you said, looking at her, and then behind her shoulder, we see Norman Bates come in the shadow. All of it very slow and very deliberate. And then we break out into the fast pace. He attacks her, stabbing. We're cutting like every like half second, close up on her eye, on her stomach, on the blood going down the drain. I love the tempo. That's something we talk a lot about in editing. There's a tempo when it comes to edits. You don't want just cut, or cut, cut. You want like something in between. And every scene's different, but you want to like build up tension. You want to build something with your cutting. So I think the movie did a good job with it. It went from slow to really fast in the middle to slow again at the end when Norman Bates runs away and she grabs the curtain. She falls down dead, and we're focusing on her face. Then we focus on the blood going down the drain, and it's all very slow. So I think the pacing was immaculate. All this to be said, really long roundabout way to say. Even though it was pioneering for violence in this day and age, that day and age of the movie's 1960s, it was a little cheesy how they handled the violence. Again, to them, I'm sure it was horrific. Specifically the shot, they have a shot where they never show the knife going into her. And we only see blood going down the water, going down the drain. We don't really, and we see her bloody hand, but we don't see knife wounds. We don't see gashes. We don't see blood coming down like her abdomen or anything. And so to be honest with you, Jeffrey, the fact that I knew there was this famous scene, but the fact that I didn't know she died in the middle, there was a part of me where I was like, is she still alive? Maybe it's me being stupid, but I really was like, is the person missing her with the knife? Is she being stabbed? Because they showed the specific shot of this close-up of her stomach, and the knife goes towards her stomach and then just like stops. And so again, I think it was that limitation with they're already pushing the bounds of violence. They can't go further. That I think really did break my suspension of disbelief. I'm like, is this woman even being murdered right now? Again, the pacing of it, the buildup was good, but then the actual like restraint they had to show was unfortunately kind of broke that suspension of disbelief.
I had a very similar thought too. For a very brief moment of time, I was thinking, is she coming back from this? Is she gonna last long enough for maybe someone to find her? Or, for all the reasons you mentioned. But I do really like that shot of her face pressed against the tile, like at the end, and slowly zooming out from her eye, right? I thought that was a beautifully composed shot, one. And speaking of composition, I really like how the cinematography creates a sense of claustrophobia, right, in the viewer. Like the one shot of the eyeball staring through the peephole was an incredible shot, and it makes me think of Andre Bazin actually, where he says that one of the virtues of film as a medium is it can show us mundane everyday things in profound ways, right? Like I would never have seen an eyeball that way um, before, but the camera lens is allowing me to experience it in a new light. That was incredibly tight and uncomfortable. And of course, we've talked about her interaction with the cop, right? Very close up on her face and his face, and we're seeing every bead of sweat as they're going about this highly tense interaction. Were there any moments that made you feel particularly claustrophobic?
Yeah, I mean, I think the scene that absolutely sticks out to me is earlier-ish in the movie when Marion first shows up to the Bates Motel, and Norman Bates shows up, and this is kind of the scene where at first he's like, is he like kind of charismatic? That like nerdy oaf-ish person, but he's kind of charismatic in his oafish awkwardness kind of person.
Yeah.
That's what Norman Bates is at first. And so he's like, "Hey, I can give you a sandwich. How about you come into my office and we'll have dinner together?" And she's like, "Yeah, sure. You know what? Anything to get my mind off that I'm being chased by the cops." So they go into his office and they're eating the sandwich, and it's pretty normal back and forth conversation. But and this is not just like good cinematography, it's great writing. At first, it's normal conversation. Why do you have a motel? What are you doing here? And then it divulges into like his enjoyment of taxidermy. And then it kind of devolves into some of his anger with his mother. And as it's doing this, we're starting to get these really cool compressed, probably with like a telephonic lens of Norman Bates sitting in a chair with his taxidermy owl in the corner background. But the lens they used like compressed his face onto like that owl in a very claustrophobic way. And they had about 3 different angles. I think the most iconic one is the owl, but they would do different angles with different birds, really, really like there didn't feel like there was any depth in a good way. Usually with cinematography, you want depth. That's not always necessarily true. I remember, side tangent, one of the first jobs I ever worked on in Atlanta was on a commercial shoot. Well, no, it wasn't a commercial shoot. It was like for an internal company. This company was rebranding and they were redoing all of their like internal training HR videos. And I was helping the cameraman, the videographer, and I made some comment about extreme depth, like you want depth of field for cinematic shots. And he just sighed so depressingly. I still can visualize it. And he's like, people need to watch more old films. Depth of field wasn't always cinematic. And I think this like just this example of sometimes this feeling of like claustrophobia, no, like a very large depth of field. Everything can be seen. There's no shallowness. There's no like, oh, this person's here and everything will just blur in the background. I think can be very cinematic when done properly. And so that scene with Norman Bates in there with all of the owls and all the birds compressed onto his face, that felt very claustrophobic and very creepy and very eerie. And then the eye shot was awesome. That shot where he's looking through the peephole was definitely one of the better shots in the entire movie.
Yeah, so comparing this movie with like Rear Window, um, do you feel you notice similarities between them? Like, can you pinpoint what is Alfred Hitchcock's style?
Oh man, it's been a minute since I've seen it. The 2 things that we talked about that come up to mind is voyeurism. Like I said, both movies are heavily voyeuristic, and again, his idea of suspension. His idea of suspension is setting up this idea and then having the characters watch it unfold or go towards it in a very slow, tempered pace that builds suspension and tenseness. I would say those were the 2 things
Yeah, like
that I can remember.
in Rear Window when he's flash banging the killer with his camera to keep him from slicing and dicing the man in the wheelchair. Yeah, that's a good example of that. I've also seen so I've seen of Alfred Hitchcock's movies. There is Rear Window, now Psycho. I've seen The Birds, which is literally a horror film about a town that is being overrun by birds. Apparently, it really freaked out my dad when he saw it as a kid, but we saw it as an adult, and it's just a town with a lot of birds. Um, and then I've seen one about a Catholic priest who, like a murderer, confesses that murder to the priest, and then realizes, wait a minute, I can frame this guy, and he can't like share that with anyone. But all those aspects of like how he creates tension, I think it solidifies him. He was a master of his craft. Like he was able to make the birds at least somewhat engaging, even if he was unethical in how he treated his actresses. Like one of his actresses had a genuine fear of birds, and she was promised that she wouldn't have to be in like the same room as birds. And sure enough, he just let loose a bunch of birds in a room that she was in, and caught her reaction to it on film.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember all the stories, so I don't want to just shit on someone without remembering it. But I do believe Alfred Hitchcock is kind of like maybe not the best person. I feel like how he treated cast and crew, and specifically his actors, I think could be pretty frowned upon.
He's definitely like an auteur. I think he would have considered himself that. Like he is the driving vision behind his art, and maybe he doesn't give other people the credit that they deserve, and so he feels that he can treat them little lesser, maybe. But that's just me speculating at this point because I've heard those stories as well. He didn't have a belly button.
Oh, that's not where I thought that sentence was going to end.
Yeah, I didn't either, but I thought it was worth bringing up as he did not have a belly button.
Okay, if we're talking about fun facts about Alfred Hitchcock and his movies, guess what they use for the blood in the shower scene?
I'd have to assume we would use like corn syrup that's been dyed red, but they didn't.
You're correct. They used, and you know what's funny? Before we started the podcast, Jeffrey was telling me about this color science video he was watching and how it had to do with like reds and the different hue, in black and white, the different hues of colors having different contrasts, and how certain reds would just show up as black. It has something similar to do with that, because what they used was Hershey syrup, and that apparently just the color of it. Granted, Hershey syrup is already blackish, but apparently it just would be so contrasty that it could kind of be mistaken as the hue of red when you're filming in black and white, and the consistency helped with it as well.
Well, that's a really fun fact. And I'm going to look up the video that I was watching so that I can share it with y'all because it's worth sharing. It was on makeup in the time of silent film in that era of black and white films.
While Jeffrey Googles that for us, do I have any other fun facts about this movie? Or any other just thoughts in general?
All right.
I liked. Oh, Jeffrey found it. Good. I don't have to riff for time.
Yeah.
Thank
goodness.
goodness.
The video is called "The Real Reason Silent Film Actors Looked So Strange," and the YouTuber is Swafford. So, guys, definitely check it out.
Yeah. If you want us to send it to you, email us at theholymomentpodcast@gmail.com. Tell us you want to watch this video, and Jeffrey will email you the link.
I will
definitely not be a virus for your computer.
Oh, for sure. Like, you trust me. I've got a trustworthy face.
Oh, no. His Norman Bates smile. Let's see your best Norman Bates smile, Jeffrey.
Let's see. I wish I had his face in front of me, but just like...
That's very good.
No.
Very creepy.
My Norman Bates smile and then my creepiest smile, I think, are probably different or distinct.
What's your creepiest smile?
Well, I'll try to do a Norman Bates smile first. Sorry, audio-only listeners. This has got to be a very boring portion.
I'll describe it. Jeffrey will smile, and I'll describe it to all our non-video watchers. All right, he's holding his hair back. Oh, he looks like he needs to shit.
This is the
looks
Norman Bates.
Uncomfortable. Nope, he looks like he has to poop, and he doesn't know how. He's forgotten how to poop to everyone.
All right, so here's the creepiest.
Okay, the creepy one is he's showing us his teeth, and his eyes are big. All right, everyone. Oh, that's creepy. That's a good one. Okay. Well, with that segment done,
your turn, Nathaniel.
Okay. Let me see. You didn't describe it.
Oh yeah. It's a cute little chipmunk.
Yeah, it did feel more cute. Okay, with all that to be said, I guess last thoughts of wrapping this up. Since we're talking so much about camera work and cinematography, just really quick, what was your favorite shot in the film?
Oh, the peephole. No doubt about it. That was beautiful, beautifully composed.
That probably stood out as the most stylistic in the whole movie. I think mine was the shot you talked about earlier, after Marion is killed, and they kind of cut to black, and they cut to this really, I don't know if they cut to black, but they cut to this really close-up shot of her eyeball, and they slowly pull out, and just like, It felt like a stoic statue. It felt like an oil painting from the Roman century. Just something so picture perfect. The way her body laid, the way her expression, the cold stone face of her. Something about it was just so perfectly composed.
Those two
Loved
shots
it. It was so beautiful.
are the ones that will be sticking with me. As I mean, as far as like shots, static shots, I should say. Shots that are, I mean, they're not static because we're zooming out, but it doesn't involve any blocking. Him coming in through the door and we see his blurry silhouette. That's iconic. But as far as images go, it's the shot that you mentioned of her face pressed against the tile floor, close up on her eyes, it zooms out, and then the eye and the peephole.
All of those. And then I would say the ones I talked about earlier, that wide shot of Norman Bates and then the owl in the background, I think was also a very well composed shot. Anything else you want to talk about Psycho? I know this episode we talked a lot more about, which I kind of enjoy when it comes to these movies, the themes and the overall kind of the message, and rather than like a scene for scene kind of breakdown. But also, this is such a famous movie. I'm sure dozens of people have gone through, done like scene by scene breakdowns. So if you want that, go listen to someone else's podcast. But if you enjoyed us, stick around.
I can't say that just about does it, because surely there's so many more things we could talk about concerning this film and Alfred Hitchcock. But this is also as good a place as any to call it quits, unless you have anything else you'd like to say.
Here's something that popped into my mind. What was the creepiest, scariest moment for you in the movie? For this being a Halloween special episode, guys, spooky, scary skeletons and whatnot. What was the scariest moment in this movie? Because we both kind of already admitted it's not like as scary as a lot of things are in this day and age because of what we can push with the boundaries of what we're allowed to film nowadays. And again, the techniques they set in stone with Psycho, what we have evolved and built upon.
Yeah, maybe the slow reveal of the corpse was pretty freaky for me. I think I was genuinely unsettled by Norman Bates coming in through the bathroom door. That was more spooky to me than the actual slaying of Marion Crane. It was him just walking in. And then all of the scenes with Marion Crane and the cop, maybe not all of the scenes, but just watching her being followed by him. I thought that was very, not spooky per se, but very suspenseful. So that's what I would say. What about you?
It would have 100% been, the classic reveal of the mother all shriveled up. But again, I had that spoiled. It still was scary for me. I may or may not have been covering my eyes with the blanket, but like I knew that was what was about to happen. I think just like the easiest, there was a lot of moments that were maybe more tense or more suspenseful, but just the creepiest, most scared I got was just, it's classic. It's when Lilla, the sister, went into Norman Bates' childhood bedroom. You get the close-up shot of the creepy doll. You get the close-up shot of the creepy bunny. You get the shot of his childhood bed that you assume he still sleeps in. So, what's more creepy than creepy, weird childhood toys? Like, that's a staple in horror movies. And I just think this movie, it doesn't take much to scare me, but I think that was a classic horror trope that maybe this movie kind of started it, but that was really unsettling for me. Everything else, again, was suspenseful and tense, but that was creepy.
Yeah. Here's what I'll say. I think that Norman Bates looks somewhat like Andrew Garfield.
Yeah, I 100% can see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that Andrew Garfield would play a great Norman Bates. Like his character in whatever movie it was that he was with, like Florence Pugh, he had sort of that nerdy, awkward energy that Norman Bates has, just a little more well-adjusted, a little more charismatic. But
I agree. I think he has the stretch as an actor to play nerdy, charismatic, and then go into a very dark, creepy. Did you know there's 3, not remakes, there are 3 more movies in the series. There's Psycho 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Surely Alfred Hitchcock did not direct those.
He did not. But the second one, people actually really like.
Oh.
I think the third and fourth are kind of like, no. But the second one, it has a pretty solid rating. And what I was reading, people are like, it's hard to follow up like a masterpiece. honestly, you probably shouldn't even touch it. But the fact that they did, I think people are like, this is about as good as you could hope for.
Was it the same characters or some?
Yeah, same cast, a lot of same cast.
Wow.
Not Norman Bates, the lead, the Patrick, I believe, the actor's name. Anthony Perkins, not Patrick. Anthony Perkins returns as Norman Bates, I think in all four.
I will say, I loved seeing the private eye in this movie. It really felt, this isn't a film noir, but just that archetype of character I miss, you know? And he was so archetypally the private eye in a film noir film. And I would not doubt if there are films that actor has been in where he's played the lead role and he's been negotiating with a femme fatale and he gets caught up in some conspiracy.
Yeah, it was again, it was like Hitchcock playing with the audience expectation because after Marianne is killed, Arbogast enters in. It's like, is this our new main character? The private eye going to be the main character? And then lo and behold, he's killed as well. So a fun little mini twist arc, a little subgenre in the film of like film noir. And then he's pretty quickly though dealt with by Norman Bates. I think that's most things I want to talk to you about with the movie. I'm trying to think if I missed anything. Anything racking your brain that you're desperate to talk about for Psycho?
Not really, not at the moment. If we had an audience that engaged with us on our email, we could probably bring out those things and talk about those comments, but we don't. So
one day. If you guys don't email us or comment on our videos, Jeffrey's going to dress up as his mother and come stab you.
That's true. Yeah, I will do that.
I've noticed Jeffrey being nice at the end of the podcast, being like, it would be nice if people email us. So I know he's been trying the nice card, but we haven't been getting any more emails or comments. So therefore, I think Jeffrey needs to go back to Murder Psycho Hobo.
Yeah, all those things. Guys, if you don't email us, I will nuke Taiwan and I will blame it on China. And I will start World War III.
He's going big. He's not going small.
Yeah.
Well, sweet. Well, before we alienate all of our audience members, what was your holy moment?
My holy moment. I think just this is a groundbreaking film, and it pushed a lot. I was really thrilled with how edgy it was. Right. It wouldn't be considered particularly edgy today. It was refreshing that it opened doors to more films like this being made. And so, like, it's not one particular moment. It's more just the place that this film occupies in history. I really appreciate. And that's my holy moment.
And it's fun. It's fun to go watch classic movies that defined film history because then you can, like a bunch of movies that you like now in this 21st century, you can watch Psycho and be like, wow, that's how this was impacted. So it can be fun to like find the root of a lot of like genres and story and archetypical characters. So that's a good one. For me, really surprised by what my answer was. I watched the movie and I was sitting down, I was like, is my holy moment a bigger concept? The first idea was like, yeah, is it like because it's such this like influential movie? But I thought back and I was like, what was my favorite part of the movie? And you know what part I got really, really into, which really surprised me? After Marion was killed, the like painstaking 5 minutes, 6 minutes, whatever it was, we watch Norman clean up the body. My favorite part by far. And this is, I was thinking, I was like, why? That's like, it's something you usually skip in the movie. What's so interesting about this bit? It's nothing particularly fascinating. He mops up some blood and he throws her in a trunk and then he sinks the car. Who cares? But then as I was thinking about it, I figured out why. It goes back to what I said at the beginning of this movie. This is a voyeuristic movie. This movie, or for the first half of the movie, we're watching people watch Marion. First, it's that businessman that comes in with the money, flaunting around when she's a secretary, and he's got it oogling her with her eyes. And then it's the cop, of mistrust. Who is this woman? And then it's Norman Bates for like 30 minutes, sexualizing her. We're always having to watch people watch her. And then all of a sudden, she's gone. And the world feels empty. And all of a sudden, I was weirdly confronted with my own voyeurism as I was watching Norman Bates silently clean up this dead body. Beforehand, we were watching someone watch someone. It felt removed. It felt normal. It didn't feel vulnerable. All of a sudden, I felt like this is not me trying to be deep and everything. I felt vulnerable. I felt like I was in a situation I wasn't supposed to be in. It's like you walk in on something you're not supposed to see. There was this shield beforehand. I was watching a creepy dude watch a woman. Okay, sure, whatever. But now all of a sudden, I'm watching this creepy dude and I'm the only one in the room. I'm the character I am now the Norman Bates. I am now the cop. I am now the greedy person from the beginning of the movie. I'm in the silent room watching this character clean up this dead body. And it made it uncomfortable because it shifted me as the voyeuristic one. And I don't know if it hit that way for other people, but I just was like, why am I enjoying / uncomfortable? What's happening? It's just cleaning up a body and there's not any gore or any blood. Why do I feel so on edge? And it's just we sat in silence as Norman Bates cleaned up this body and we were forced to watch it. And again, not in like dark, creepy, gross way, just in everything felt still. It was just me and Norman Bates didn't know he was being watched. And that was the weird thing. So I know that's kind of like fourth wall breaking, but it's just I loved it. I thought it was really well done. And again, that's that moment, that her death, that shifting that perspective. I think it's a really strong way to exit that scene, that famous scene, going into like new territory for the 1960s. I think it's a really strong way of entering into it with that scene.
Yeah, that's a great holy moment. Yeah, now it's just us and Norman as he's like watching the car like sink into the swamp, and all eyes are trained on him now, right? Now he is the object of everyone's suspicion, and he feels it. He feels it that the eyes are on him.
It's absolutely amazing what Alfred Hitchcock could pull off. Because like that's like every movie you're watching. If there's just one person in the room, it's you literally watching them. Like that's not voyeuristic. You're watching a movie. But again, it was because he set up that all these people are watching this woman. You're watching people watch them. So you're not the weird one. Other people are watching them. You're just the audience. But then when you strip away everyone else, all of a sudden you fill in the position of the voyeuristic person. And so it just, in my opinion, genius. 10 out of 10. I think this might be one of the most, we do a lot of weird movies on the Holy Moment podcast. We're not doing just like cult, or not cult classic, but not just classics. But this is probably one of, if not the most famous movie we've ever done on the podcast.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if we've done others. I mean, The Mummy it probably has more popular appeal. Like more people nowadays have probably seen The Mummy than they have Psycho. Even if Psycho is the more important film.
Definitely enjoyed Psycho more than The Mummy.
Which, again, is a really hot take. But, oh, you know what? A good example of a movie that broke ground that we did not enjoy. Terminator.
Yeah, we talked a lot about that in the episode of like, this broke ground for this genre, but both of us were like, it kind of sucks. Sucks is strong, but I did not enjoy it. I'm not going to give Psycho a 5 out of 5, but it, even though divorced of like what it did for the future of filmmaking, it still was a great movie.
Yeah, I would happily watch that again.
Yeah. Are you brave enough to give it a 5-star rating for all the people out there to hate on us? Be like, you don't understand movies.
No, I think I'm honestly going to give it a 3.5. Or maybe 3.7.
I was thinking 3.6, 3.7. You know what's weird? I'm surprised because, again, I don't like rewatching movies. I think I would rewatch this movie. I think this is a movie that strikes me as like, I'd like to I genuinely, not because like I need to understand it more like Memento. Like I enjoyed it and I think I could rewatch it and not be bored. So that's a pretty high compliment when it comes to me.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because I love rewatching movies. It's not odd for me to rewatch movies, but I'm trying to find, because I know we're gonna spin a wheel soon. And I believe it's my wheel, right?
Yeah. Oh, folks at home, Jeffrey's having a hard time finding his wheel because big news. He has a new computer.
That's right, folks. I'm working off of a Mac Mini M2. Don't ask me to name all the other specs because I'm not a techie guy. That's Nathaniel's wheelhouse. And I have him to thank for this beautiful monitor that I have. And I bought it off of him. And now I can, very comfortably record the podcast for y'all, my sweets, my sweeties, my darlings.
I tell my wife, I'm like, Jeffrey needs a better monitor. I should probably buy a new one and give him my old one. Oh, Jeffrey needs a computer. I should probably buy a new computer, give him my old one. I'm just going to use Jeffrey as like a an orphan case to like get myself new equipment.
Yeah, I have lights courtesy of Nathaniel. I have it made, folks. Get yourself a friend like
Jeffrey's
Nathaniel.
house.
Yeah,
That house he's in right now.
he
because of
built
me.
it by hand.
I did. No. If you can't find the wheel, you know what you could do?
What?
You could just give me a number 1 through 4, and I will tell you what movie we're watching next week. I could be the wheel, ladies and gentlemen.
That would be fun. The thing is, let's see here. The movies that I have left, there's Lemon Lima, Dear Lemon Lima for a coming of age movie.
Mm-hmm.
There is A Knight's Tale for hobbies. There is, what are the other categories?
You have Wild Card and What Would My Co-Host Like are the other 2 categories.
Yeah, and the What Would My Co-Host Like is There Will Be Blood.
Yep, another Paul Thomas Anderson movie.
And then the wild card. What was the wild card?
It was a Kurosawa movie.
Yeah, I think it was Akiru, maybe.
Yep, Ikiru.
Yeah,
Those are your 4.
those are the
I will not
4.
tell you what order I'm using my big brain mouth algorithm to figure out this complex equation, but you just give me 1 through 4 and I'll tell you which one we're doing.
All right, let's do 3.
You got A Knight's Tale,
Hey,
which is the category about our hobbies.
yeah. So, big context for that one. I really enjoy history, specifically medieval history. I was going to do The Last Duel because that's based on an actual event, but I figured that I had too many long and serious films in my categories, and so I went with this one instead, which is very fun. It's Heath Ledger.
Says the man who has Dougal on his categories. Long and deep.
Long
and
and serious, right? It's too artistic, right? I gotta bump it down. Anyway,
Oh,
I look
sweet.
forward to talking about that movie with y'all. Please, if you've seen the movie before, or you want to watch it with us, engage with us on our social media platforms. You can find us at the Holy Moment podcast at gmail.com. We post on Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, Facebook. We love you. And with that, goodbye.
Ooh. Oh, I shit my pants.
No, don't do that.